Lucas Giolito is one of the most polarizing players in your fantasy drafts because he could either win you your league or be the pick you regret the most. We'll tell you why on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Sports Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source for fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino, here as always with my co-host and my brother, Matthew Ane.
Yo.
You can find us on all social media platforms. Just search for Locked On Fantasy Baseball, and we'll be there. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment, especially on YouTube, because we love to talk fantasy baseball with you. Real quick, though, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more, and visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. So today we're coming back at you with some, yesterday we did batters. Today we're talking about pitchers that Matt and I believe are currently being drafted too high based on ADP. And oh boy, Matt, I think I got to take the lead here, brother.
Okay.
If you guys have been, fans of ours or been paying attention to anything that Matt and I have talked about over the last year and since we're getting into fantasy season over here, there's somebody that I absolutely hate, and I know hate's a strong word, but this guy burned me in too many leagues last year, and I never had him before last year, and that's Lucas Giolito, starting pitcher for the Chicago White Sox. Oh, boy. I don't even know where to begin with this guy, but I guess the best place would be to read you off his stats from last year. So last year, Lucas Giolito, as a 27-year-old, had 11 wins, 9 losses, a 4.90 ERA. He started 30 games, 161 innings, 177 strikeouts, and he had a putrid 1.43 whip. So the thing with Lucas Giolito that I've been, striving to let everybody know is that he was a big, heavy spider tack guy. And once they banned the spider tack, he started to go downhill. And then last year being the first full year without it, absolutely disappointed everybody. His career FIP, once again, FIP is fielding independent pitching, kind of an ERA indicator of what their ERA, should be rather than what it is. He has a career 4.26 guy. He only had, 2 years under a 3.4 FIP. And then here's the big thing with Lucas Giolito that I want to point out. During the 2019, 2020, and 21 seasons, he was throwing at least 93.9 miles per hour. In 2018, when the year he was the worst pitcher in baseball, he threw 92.4 miles an hour. And now 2022, he goes back down to 92.6 miles an hour. So the velocity is down almost 2 miles an hour from his peak. And then also he's not getting a lot of swinging strikes anymore. So his stuff isn't as nasty as it used to be. I'm absolutely fading Lucas Giolito. Right now, let me tell you this. He's coming off the board as number 46 starting pitcher, pick 153 overall. There's so many other pitchers in that range that I would rather have. And I have Giolito literally buried in my rankings. And it's just more of the fact that I'm just not taking him at all. Matt, you're going to laugh at where I have him. I have him at 82. I have Lucas Giolito as my 82nd starting pitcher. But that's enough haterade for me. Where's my haterade? I got some water over there, but it's enough haterade for me, Matt. How do you feel about Giolito?
I should have mailed you the Haterade cup so you had the official.
Definitely.
I feel the exact opposite about Giolito. I mean, yes, he killed you last year. I have him as my 51st pitcher. So with his ADP, I still think it's a little high, 46. There's a couple names around there that I probably draft a little bit higher, a little bit over him, right? So let me just get down to that right quick. So we said 153.
Yeah, you got Jordan Montgomery.
Yeah, Brandon Lowe. Yeah, exactly. And those are just like, pitchers. I could actually scoop up Brandon Lowe if I waited on second baseman. I could just scoop him up and be happy. It doesn't exactly have to be. It's and there's Mitch Haniger in that area too. So you got to look at it like, how are you building your team? And like, where are those spurts where there's really good bats late or really good arms later in the draft? And then you got to see what that clump is and what you'd rather have pieces from the earlier before of a higher end pitcher. And then you want to get that bat later because there wasn't ones in that range. You got to play that ADP game. But I do think Giolito is bound for a bounce back year. And here's the reason why. Because you said in 2021 at the end, they kind of banned the spider glue at the end, right? Like
Yes,
probably
sir.
right after the All-Star break, right?
I couldn't tell you an exact date, but yeah,
somewhere around there, right?
probably. Yeah.
So here's the funny part about that year. So the first half of 2021, he had a 4.15 ERA, and he had 104 innings pitched. He had 125 strikeouts. His MO, right? But the second half, after they banned the spider stuff, he had a 2.65 ERA. He had 74 innings pitched, and he had 76 strikeouts. Now, that tells me that he didn't exactly need it. I think something was wrong last year. I don't know what. I'm not in the guy's head. I'm not in the dugout with the team and with him personally. But I could say that I think that something else was going on this year. I don't think the talent just disappears. He was a high-end pitching prospect that Washington almost botched. White Sox finally got a hold of him and changed it. So I just think that Giolito has a chance. Hence, I don't have him drafted where I was drafting before in the top 10. He's my 51st. So I'm okay with kind of grabbing him. And I hope he falls. I hope I get a guy like you that passes him that he could fall to me. Like I'll take him as my. And the best part is, though, you're getting him at pitcher 46. That's your fifth pitcher in some leagues. Like, you can't be mad at that. Like, if Giolito's my fifth pitcher, I'll just move on if he's bad. But let's move on because I think we've had enough Giolito discussion here. Let's talk about Mr. Kevin Gausman. Gausman has had an interesting career. When he was on Baltimore, he was absolute garbage. Like, I couldn't even consider him as a good pitcher. Like, it just was atrocious to just watch him go. He had one good season in 2014 that was that was a 3.57 ERA. After that was a 4.25. Then he was a 3.61. He's been all over the place. And then he was a 4.68 and then a 3.92. Like, it wasn't a guy you can count on. He was a waiver wire guy at that point that you take him while he was hot, and then when he was cooling off, you just dropped him. And then again in 2018, before he got traded to Atlanta, he had a 4.43 ERA. And on Atlanta, he was doing all right. He had a 2.87. Then he gets to Toronto, struggled a little bit, but then figured it out in 2020. And I think that was the year it kind of kicked him off. He had a 3.62 ERA, and a 2.81 ERA. And then last year, a 3.35 ERA. And then he's always been he's been a strikeout guy for those last 2 years. 227 strikeouts in 2021, 205 last year. He pitched 192 in 2021, pitched 174 last year. The only thing that I really have a serious knock on him is the whip. So, like, the whip is high. He's a 1.27 guy. So, like, I'm just not a fan of that. At SP 66, no, I'm sorry. He's 21st overall pitcher.
That's what it is.
And 66 pick. Like, I'm not good with that. Like, Gausman, I have ranked decent. Don't get me wrong. But I have Gausman as my 35th pitcher. So, like, that's too rich for my blood. Like, there is plenty of guys that we could talk about that are going, pick 66. Like, okay, let's look at that, right? Christian Javier. I'm taking him well before that. Luis Castillo at 60, right? You Darvish at 62. And like I said, I'm even okay with talking about bats. Teoscar Hernandez, George Springer, right? Zach Gallen at 69. Eloy Jimenez, Starling Marte, Framil Valdez. Like, all those names I'm drafting well over Gausman. Not to say Gausman's bad, but just Gausman for that price costs way too much money for me. But, before we move on and let Dom, get going here, we do need to talk about something. And here at Locked On, we're super excited about our new sports betting partner, FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here now, and it's perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers getting no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bet back if your bet doesn't win. Just download FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from money lines, points scored, and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine bets for a bigger chance at a bigger payout and same-game parlay. So don't miss out and download FanDuel now at FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon for your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Make every moment more with FanDuel, your official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, Dom, I've done enough talking. Why don't you go ahead and take this next guy?
Well, I'm gonna chime in about Gausman first, and that was a great read, by the way, brother. That was spot on.
Thank you.
I enjoyed that one. So actually, the more that Matt and I talk about Gausman, the more I do like him. But the thing is, once again, it's not that I hate Kevin Gausman. I hate the price. Once again, at 2021 starting pitcher, pick 66 overall. I'm taking Javier, Gallen, Valdez, Musgrove, Glasnow, McKenzie, Ray, Cortez, Webb, Gilbert, Wright, Severino, Kershaw, Kirby, Snell, all over him. Taking all of those guys over him. And, Matt read you off the stats. He's been pretty good over the last few years. 200 strikeouts plus over the last two. I would take him if the price was a little bit better on him, but it's how are you going to take a guy with, what did he win last year? 12 games, and a guy with a 1-2-3 whip. So out of the four, major pitching categories, he's really only contributing 2 with ERA and Ks, and he's hurting you in the wins category, and he's hurting you in the whip category. I can't. Too rich for my blood. I picked 21 for Gausman. But once again, I don't hate him. If he was going a little lower, I'd probably take him. And I also have Gausman ranked as my pitcher 39, which I actually see moving up sooner than later. But let's move on. Let's talk about somebody else here. Newly traded to the Minnesota Twins. That's Pablo Lopez. So the thing with Pablo Lopez is he was the best pitcher in baseball pretty much for, I want to say, the first month, maybe first month and a half.
First 2 months.
And then I believe it was after even probably around the first 2 months. And the thing is that he kind of just fell off a cliff. I can't tell you exactly what it was about him that made him fall off said cliff. But man, it was very, very tough, own him through that second half. Let me read off what Pablo Lopez did last year. Pablo Lopez is a 26-year-old last year. He had 10 wins, 10 losses, a 3.75 ERA, 32 starts, 180 innings, 174 Ks, and he finished up with a 1.16 whip. Now, the thing is, Pablo Lopez coming off the board, pitcher 48, 158 overall, and I think if, a lot of people that maybe tuned out during the second half last year didn't really see, how Pablo Lopez finished the year. They kind of like, oh, I remember when, fantasy baseball started last year, Pablo Lopez was amazing. And, as I said, faded out in the second half. Pablo Lopez is my pitcher 58. So I'm about 10 spots lower than ADP. Once again, it's not that I hate Pablo Lopez. I just like the pitchers that are going in his range a little bit more than I like him.
I don't blame you. I mean, I have him a lot higher than you do. I have him at 41.
Okay.
I like Pablo Lopez. My only problem is he's more of a flangey guy. It's funny enough, if you look at his career numbers of how many innings he's pitched, last year was the most by far because he can usually never stay on the field. All right. 2021 at 102 innings, 2020 at 57, but that's a shortened year, so but still. And then 2019 111 and 2018 58. The trade is kind of like a neutral starting ground. I think they're both bad teams in terms of being able to get him wins anyway. If anything, there's more upside where he went, but it's still neutral for me. He'll probably win about the same. The only thing I hope is that he can kind of get things under control, keep that ERA down, and get back to a K per 9, if not more. Because, I mean, through his career, he's been, a plus K per 9 guy, at least, whenever he pitched, like 2021, 102 innings, and then 115 strikeouts. Even in 2020, that shortened year, 57 innings pitched, 59 strikeouts, so on and so forth, right? So I think we can get back to that and return to the mean. And then if he can kind of just keep the ERA, I'm kind of okay with the 3.75, but I'd like to see him at a 3.5 where I think he'd probably be more on that like pace where I think that's kind of where he'll be for the rest of his career. I think he's a good pitcher. I just think he can, if he stays on the field and he can keep up with the innings and the stamina, he could be really good. I'm not going to say he's going to do what he did in the beginning of the season, but let's move on here.
Matt, real quick, I just chime back in for 1 second. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I just wanted to pull up the end of the season for Pablo Lopez. So from May 24th to October 2nd, 24 games started for him. He went 11 wins, 13 losses, 134 innings pitched, only 126 Ks, a 4.50 ERA, and a 4.20 FIP, and it was just very, very bad. Batters hit, Oh no, the batters didn't hit too great. To hit 250 off of him, but it just was very bad during the second half. But go ahead, my brother. I'm sorry. I just wanted to
Yeah.
chime in and let people know how
Ah,
bad his second half was.
I completely hear it, and I think that's all part of the fatigue. Again, the most innings he's
Could
ever
be,
pitched
yeah.
argument.
No, I hear that. I hear that for sure.
But let's move on. Let's talk
Yes, sir.
about somebody that I think is just being overdrafted, not because they're not good, but because I just think it's too early based off of draft strategy, right? And then we're going to talk about Edwin Diaz. Edwin Diaz is the number one closer, which by far in between that. There's no joke about that. But the 36th overall pick, you're talking the third round. Why are you taking a closer that early? Just based off of just draft instinct alone. Why aren't you trying to grab, especially this year of all years, 3 bats or at least 2 bats and then a starting pitcher? Like I just can't comprehend it unless your league permits, like 50 points for saves. I don't understand why. Like it just makes no sense to me. Closers are good for 2 things: saves and keeping your ERA down and your whip. So 3 things. Other than that, they're very rarely going to get you wins. And the only good thing about Edwin Diaz is he's pretty much drafting like Trey Turner. He'll win you the category by himself, but he's not worth a third round pick. You tell me you want to grab him in like, the 50s range, the 60s range. I'm okay with that. Like that's good. But you're going to tell me 36 overall? Like I'm sorry, you've been hitting the crack pipe. I can't help you there.
Yeah, I'm going to keep this short and sweet because I agree with everything Matt just said. The only reason you should really be ever taking a closer to high is if it's a draft and hold, right? Or a league like that where you just literally draft your team and then you cannot pick anybody up during the season. I know there's a lot of leagues like that on Fantrax and, those big competitive, big money leagues. Okay, yeah, sure. Then get your stud closer early. But there's literally no reason to do that in the third round. Get yourself a bat, especially in a year where bats are so thin. Like they thin out super quick. You don't want to do that. But let's move on. Let's talk about our next guy here. I kind of look at him in like the whatchamacallit, the Lucas Giolito type of thing, where I just think they're completely washed and overrated. And that's Jose Berrios. Just bury this guy. He's, I feel like he's been overrated for a long time now. His best ERA ever is a 3.52, and that's still kind of like it's good, but it's not amazing, right? So why do we ever really consider this guy an ace? I don't see it. I didn't see it coming into last year. I don't see it this year. And once again, last year, Jose Berrios as a 28-year-old, 12 wins, 7 losses, a 5.23 ERA, 32 starts, 172 innings, only 149 Ks, and a 1.41 whip. Now, if you go look at that 2021, like I said, that 3.52 ERA and the 192 innings, 204 Ks, and the 106 whip looks like an outlier. Everyone, almost everyone in their baseball career, you play long enough, you'll have an outlier year, whether it's good or bad. And it just stands out to me as like, oh, okay, so this guy had one really good year, and then the rest of his career has kind of been trash. I have, Jose Berrios coming off the board as 63 overall pitcher, 219, and I still think that's too high. I just have Jose Berrios literally buried. I have him at like around 100, to be honest with you. Just somebody I'm not looking at all in fantasy drafts this year.
I completely get it. I have him at 99.
I think.
I legit hate Jose Berrios. You know what he reminds me of?
Go
Like
ahead.
Chris Archer on his way out.
Oh yeah, that's a good comp. Good comp.
Like 1,000,001 Ks, even though last year he didn't do it. He had 149 Ks with 172 innings, so even that's going down. So the only reason you'd even draft him would be for the Ks, and that wasn't there. So I guess it was kind of promising last year, the 2021, when he got traded to Toronto, which is a really good team. Everybody expected a lot from him. That, hey, the wins are going to be there. He's going to take this step forward. He's going to be this ridiculous guy. Because that year he had 204 strikeouts and a 3.52, which is the outlier year, right? Like I could see why everybody drafted him so high last year, but I think now we kind of take a step back and we go, okay, this kid is pretty much done. He's pretty much going to be a high 3, like a 3.92 to 4.2, and we're just going to get 1,000,000 Ks, and that's Chris Archer in a nutshell. But let's move on here. And Dom, I think you got somebody to talk about.
Oh yeah, let's talk. Guys, once again, I'm not going to keep this short and sweet here. We're talking about Emmanuel Clase. Emmanuel Clase, very well.
No,
Oh, what do you
Mr.
want to talk
Lynn,
about?
our friend.
I apologize. I apologize here. Let's let me let you guys know. If you guys are new around here, we have a colleague who's been on our show before. That's Lindsay Crosby, right? The guy hosts Locked On MLB Prospects, and he is an encyclopedia of knowledge. The guy is absolutely outstanding. Go check out his podcast. Go back and check out our top 1 through 10 prospects. He was on that episode, and he did a great job of, talking about all of the prospects that are going to be fantasy relevant this year. So once again, that's Lindsey Crosby. He is the host of Locked On MLB Prospects. Please, please, please go check out his show. It's absolutely fantastic. But with that being said, let's move on. I gave a little tease. Let's talk about Emmanuel Clase. And this is kind of just, once again, keeping it super short. Go back and listen to the Edwin Diaz part. Pretty much the same applies to Emmanuel Clase. He had a monster year last year. He could be the best closer in all of baseball. But why is he coming off the board at pick 38? I once again, if it's a draft and hold league, sure, I get it. Understood. You want to get that safe closer early on. But I just, in a redraft league or any other type of league, I just don't think it's worth it to take a closer that high. And that's why we just wanted to point out, the top 2 closers are going way too high right now.
Amen to that. I think we're done there.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to Mr. Chris Bassitt. He's somebody I just don't like this year. He had a good year last year. He had a 3.42 ERA. He pitched 181 innings. He had 167 strikeouts. He had a 1.14 WHIP. And he won 15 games. Hey, great. He's on the Mets. You can't get mad at those numbers, but they're not a K per 9. They're not, blowing you out the park. I don't think he's the pitcher he was when he was on Oakland. And, I think we're starting to see that now. And I think we're going to start seeing that break down a little bit longer, and I know he's not the slowest guy to throw a pitch, but if you ever watch him, there is better pitchers that I think are just going to adjust because we're talking Hall of Famers, the guys that are slower than him or guys that are damn well close to being. But watching him play, because I watched a lot of Phillies this year, very slow to throw the pitch. And I think the pitching clock's going to throw him off with timing. It's just like, oh my God, I'm going to fall asleep watching this guy pitch. And, I just think that it may hurt him. It's not going to completely bury him, but it can throw him off. He may get frustrated. He may get blown up more games. But that could be the story for any pitcher this year that wants to take their time and they're used to it. And they don't want the balk. So, I say just watch out for him. But there's upside to him too. He's on the Mets. He's in a pitcher park, and it's great. But the 37th SP, I'm sorry. Again, you're hitting the crack pipe. It's insane for that. Where do I have him ranked right now? Chris Bassitt, I have his pitcher 60. If you're going down to guys that are around, pitcher 37 or pick 30, pick 125, right? That's where he's going overall. So in that range, right before him, Chris Bryant. After him, you got. Am I reading that right? Yeah. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm looking right at him. You got Chris Bryant. You got Bryce Harper, Anthony Rizzo, Nick Lodolo, who's also on this, who I think is going a little higher, but I pick him over Chris Bassitt. CJ Crone, Tony Gonsolin, for God's sakes.
It's my boy.
Nick Castellanos, Taylor Ward, Max Muncy, Lance Lynn, Jesus Luzardo, Clay Holmes. That's, those are guys that I'd seriously take over him. Exclude Lodolo, because we're going to talk about him in a little bit. But, and again, I was just talking about where there's bunches of guys that I'd rather draft that based off of my team construction, and where there's a bunch of bats I'd rather grab, especially outfielders that I just named, versus drafting Chris Bassitt, especially as your 38th pitcher off the board. That's just mind blowing. I'm sorry, I'd draft a whole bunch of guys over him.
Yeah, I'm in sync with you as far as the fact that he's being overdrafted as far as starting pitchers go. There's I have Chris Bassitt as my pitcher 53. But here's the thing, Chris Bassitt, if I can get him as my 6th starting pitcher, I think that's the perfect spot to get him. So if he starts to fall, I know there's a lot of people like Matt and others that maybe aren't as high as him because, starting pitching pool is so deep this year. But if I can get him as my SP6, I think that's perfect. I just want to do a little recap. I want to bring some goodness to Chris Bassitt because he's a very good pitcher. So from 2018 through last year, 2022, Chris Bassitt pitched 107 games. He came out of the bullpen for some of those because it's only 100 starts. But look at this record, 44-23 win-loss record. And that's when he played for Oakland, including, a few years in Oakland when he, played on that bad team. But 593 innings over that time, 563 strikeouts, not a K per 9, but close enough. and a 1.14 whip. So, very stellar numbers. Win-loss record's great. He's going to help you there. He's going to help you in ERA. He's going to help you in whip. The K's a little bit low. So once again, if you're going to take him as your sixth starting pitcher, or, maybe even fifth, you want to make sure you have some nice K guys before that. If you don't have nice K guys, like if you want like Julio Urias or, guys like that aren't necessarily a K per 9 guy, you might not want to take him. But if you stacked up on those K per 9 guys, take Chris Bassitt. But let's move on. Matt, why don't I'll talk about Hunter Greene, and then we'll go to your boy. I'll let you take the lead on him.
Thank you.
Hunter Greene, here's the thing with Hunter Greene is I might not be on board as far as that he's being overdrafted, and it's starting pitcher 37, pick 120 overall, but I'm like right there. Where do I have Hunter Greene? I have Hunter Greene as my 45th starting pitcher, and I think that's going to move up during spring training. The guy throws 100 miles an hour, and he's got some nasty breaking stuff as well. I know the numbers overall last year for Hunter Greene weren't great. 5 wins, 13 losses, 4.44 ERA, 24 starts, 125 innings, 164 Ks, and a 1.21 whip. But don't forget, Hunter Greene's only 22 years old, high draft pick, a high very high, highly regarded prospect when he was first on his way up. But I just want to point out what Hunter Greene did at the end of last year, right? So during his last, hold on, bear with me 1 second. I believe it was his last 8 starts. So from July 9th to October 3rd for Hunter Greene, he went 46 innings, 66 strikeouts, 1.75 ERA, and that whip 0.90. And batters hit 185 against Hunter Greene. So I think the sky is the limit for this kid. I think he's going to be an ace very, very soon. The only thing really holding him back is he's not going to win a lot of games in Cincinnati. I think he can literally help you in every other pitching category, once again, besides saves and wins.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not going to knock the guy. Like I have him ranked pretty, nicely as well. I have him as my 43 pitcher. So I'm not far off for where he's going. But the problem is this, and it's not because of, ADP of like, oh my God, he's being drafted as the 38th starting pitcher. It's that bunch. It's that same bunch I just rattled off. Guys going after him are like, again, Giancarlo Stanton, Chris Bryant, Harper, Rizzo, Crone, Castellanos, and Gonsolin. And like, those are guys that I would draft over Hunter Greene, because it's that nice bunch of guys. And I only named one pitcher. Those bats I think are a little bit more value in that spot. We always get those clusters of guys that are like, oh shoot, I probably should have drafted a pitcher there because it was a better name before, and I could have grabbed this bat and filled later. So it's just a matter of how the draft is falling to you and how your team looks. If you want to draft them, I don't blame you, but I just feel that cluster is a little bit better for bats. But
fair enough.
I'm gonna wrap this up real quick because it's literally the same argument for Nick Lodolo, right? I mentioned his name when we were talking about Bassitt. It's the name, and I have Lodolo rated higher than Bassitt, so that was the only reason why I said it. But again, I just wouldn't grab him in that area because of the names I just named. I think Lodolo is going to be great. Lodolo, not Nodolo, sorry. I think Lodolo is going to be great. I think he's going to be an outright stud just as much as Hunter Greene. They both have the upside up to wazoo, and it's going to be the cheapest you're going to get them. But am I willing to pass on the bats at that time, especially with outfield being so bad this year? That's really just where I'm at. But that's my argument.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Lodolo is good, but I don't think he has the upside of a Hunter Greene. Once again, Hunter Greene's just a freak. He's honestly.
I didn't say I was going to draft him over.
Oh no! I hear you, and I know you said that you have a Hunter Greene ranked a little higher too. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's just once again, let me. I'm like literally daydreaming about Hunter Greene right now, so I need to get that out of my head and focus on Lodolo here. I have Lodolo as my 51 starting pitcher. He has a huge amount of upside. He was very, very good in the minors. He was a very high-end pitching prospect as well. His, highest ERA ever in the minors was a 2.84, but that was only in like 12 innings. Actually, he hasn't pitched as much in the minors as I thought. So it might be an innings concern here too with Nick Lodolo. Maybe he only gets like 130, 140 because the 103 last year was the most he's ever pitched in competitive baseball, probably since college. He only threw 50 innings in 2021. He threw 12 in the minors last year, and he only threw 18 in the minors for 2019. So I think that's, part of the reason I want to fade him. The whip was a little bit high last year at a 1.24, but he has the Ks per 9. He has a pretty solid ERA. Same argument, I guess, goes against Hunter Greene. They have to pitch in Cincinnati, which is they're probably not going to win a lot of games in that ballpark and get, very home run friendly at times. So I think that's another reason, what Nick Lodolo at pitcher 39. That's actually funny. We had the 37, 38, and 39 starting pitcher by ADP on here. So, Nick Lodolo at pick 39 starting pitcher, 129 overall is a little bit rich. But guys, with that being said, that's all for today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Check out our website if you haven't already done that. Matt and I have all of our rankings on there. It's a little bit about us, that you can have access to all of our episodes on there. And, once again, thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. And after you listen to us, you got to tune in for your second listen with, once again, Lindsey Crosby, the host of Locked On MLB Prospects. Guys, an encyclopedia of knowledge. We had him on our top 1 through 10 prospect episode. Go check that out. And it was a fantastic episode. We had a great time. We will be back tomorrow with another action-packed episode. But until then, guys,
peace.